The following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
The biggest thing that affected Justin Fields was a coaching change, and now he has an offensive coordinator, and he actually will fit a scheme to the quarterback, something we have not seen in a long time.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
When I see Twitter polls and national media and fans weighing in on who is going to have the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, and I see people commenting Chicago and it's not even close, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a little defensive.
I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
I don't think the Bears are a 2 to 3 win team. So to answer your question, no. The Bears aren't going to be the worst team in the NFL.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a special edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those Chicago Bears. And tonight, we are acting as your pregame show. I'm John Buffone, and with me tonight is your favorite barkeeper and the godfather of the barroom, Mr. Aldo Gandia. Aldo, the Bears are on Amazon Prime in prime time. Kind of meta, isn't it? But in any case, the Bears are 2-3, and they're coming off what some would call a promising loss. How you doing?
Yeah, you know what? I've been one of those guys. I was so happy after a Bears loss last week because it was much better than the previous week's loss, and we actually saw some progress from Justin Fields. The key tonight is, can we get a victory and continue to see Justin Fields' improvement? So we'll be talking about a lot about that.
We will be, and I know that because you're probably going to be able to watch it on local TV. I'm watching it on Amazon Prime, so I'm probably going to be about 3 minutes behind everything you're watching. So we're going back and forth about what's going on. Just know that I'm way, way behind you. But we are going to be talking to everybody right up until kickoff, and we got a great guest lined up to help us get ready and get prepared for the Washington Commanders. But just in case this is someone's first time listening or watching Buffone 55, Aldo, can you give these people a rundown of how this show works?
Yes. Year number 6 of Buffone 55, and we've pretty much had the same format throughout. There's 3 segments. We always begin with our guest, and this week we'll talk to Commanders analyst and host of the Hogs Haven Podcast, Jamual. I'm really looking forward to his appearance on the show. That's followed by our B55 segment, and that's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. That's John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Chicago Bears and wore number 55. And we finish up with a free-for-all we call Buffone's Basement. John and I will talk all sorts of topics, field some questions from the chat room, and have some fun just before kickoff. So with that, John Buffone, are you ready?
I am ready. Like you said, Aldo, our guest tonight is the host of the Hogs Haven Podcast, Jamual. Jamual, appreciate you being on Buffone 55 right up before kickoff. How you doing?
Look, man, I'm doing all right. I can't complain. I appreciate y'all having me today. Look, let's talk some ball, man, because Washington's world, we had some major news today. And for the love of God, let's talk X's and O's and get away from all of that other stuff.
You're right. Let's talk some ball. Let's talk about what's going on. I do want to talk about something as far as the coach goes, because Ron Rivera, he's a guy that Bears fans are quite familiar with and for the most part are quite fond of. But after a 1-4 start in his 3rd year as the head coach, things seem to be heating up as far as that seat he's on. So what is more to blame for this team's struggles? Is it the construction of the roster, or has it been coaching, or has it been just a hodgepodge of both?
A hodgepodge of both is the answer. But I think when you dive into like the both part of it, it really just ultimately stems from Ron Rivera. In this situation, and obviously, like I mentioned, there was some stories that came out today stemming from the Commanders and the organization post name change and things like that. And that kind of muddies the waters just a little bit of what I'm about to say. But it happened today, but at the end of the day, Ron Rivera was given the keys to the roster, given the keys to the organization, because Dan is distracted, Dan Snyder, the owner. And then ultimately, when you have a coach-centric environment, Ron Rivera is making all the shots. He's getting his guys in. He's getting his guys from a management standpoint, roster personnel, bringing in the players that you want. And ultimately, when you go 1-4 in 2022, a year that you ultimately said this is the year you take the next step. This is the year that you elevate. And I believe this is the year that you're going to elevate. You're in a situation where it's like everything's on you now. You got your quarterback. You got Carson Wentz. Whether or not, that was your number one guy, because apparently Russell Wilson was that guy. We kind of figured it was based on how they operated in the offseason. But you got your next best guy, Carson Wentz. So how are you going to act? How are you going to perform with your player in there? There's no excuses. Like no more youth, no more immaturity. No more injuries. None of these things they're all by the wayside now. So when you're 1-4, you got to only point to the one person who was able to really control this roster and who was really able to shape it in which way that he wanted to. And it's only one person to blame. And unfortunately, we haven't had him take full accountability for why they're 1-4. But look, the people in the area know why.
There's never a lack of storylines coming out of DC with the Commanders. And another one this week was still about Ron Rivera, but it was the comments about the quarterback position. When asked about why the team was in last place in the NFC East, he just simply said quarterback. Now he's since tried to step that back, and he's talked to Carson Wentz a little bit. But that leads to the question, has Wentz been that bad through the 5 games, and what has he brought to Washington? Because they have been trying to find an answer at that position, much like the Bears have been, but they've been trying to find somebody to have some stability at that position. So what's the report card on Carson Wentz?
I would categorize Carson as like an average quarterback to this point. I think a lot of people do a good job from a national perspective. They do a good job of looking at his numbers. I heard somebody like before I got on with you all, John, in that Carson Wentz is the 6th leading passer in the NFL. But like take into context how he gets those yards. There was a moment in time where the Commanders were trailing 22-0 to the Detroit Lions, and you get a lot of your yards in the second half in that game. And then you have 2 big plays. The game against the Tennessee Titans, you have 2 big plays to De'Ami Brown that accounts for 102 yards of what was really a really hard and long day for the Commanders offense. There was not a lot of continuity. You couldn't sustain things offensively. There was also some concepts that he's really not connecting on, and a lot of things that really try to get the ball into his playmaker's hands really quickly. So sometimes there's a mix in terms of what he's saying and what he isn't. And some things you hope that are layups, especially from a coordinator standpoint, where you're like, hey man, we're going to give you something underneath. You can hit Terry, you can hit De'Ami, you can hit Jahan Dotson in situations. You can even look for your new guy, Cole Turner, who's on his first game back, who we played against the Tennessee Titans. And ultimately you're looking and trying to figure out like, why isn't he really connecting on some of these things, or why isn't he even seeing it? And things like that. And it ultimately comes down to how he's processing it, plays pre-snap and things like that. And that ultimately hurts the offense, but ultimately hurts him. And you don't know like where to go, because also the coordinator has times where he's not really helping Carson Wentz out. So it's been a rocky road the first 5 games, but I do think the fact that they were able to connect on some of the deep balls, and that's obviously to De'Ami for the first 2 against the Tennessee Titans, there's some hope that maybe they can turn it around. But he's not been terrible. But at the end of the day, you do need somebody like that, especially at the cap or the number that he's at, to play a little bit better than where he is. And it's been a little underwhelming in terms of from an overall perspective from week 1 to week 5, now in week 6.
You talked about accountability and who's calling the shots in the organization. So I want to go to our first user question in the chat room by Saint Omni. He asked, Jamual, whose decision was it to bring in Wentz? Now, clearly, you're not going to know definitely whose decision it was, but if you had to guess, or you had to put all of the information together, who do you think it was really on to say we need to go get Carson Wentz? Because Ron Rivera said that he was high on his free agent list in the offseason. Whether or not that's true, or he's just trying to make him feel good after saying that he was the reason that they're losing. So whose decision do you think ultimately it was to bring Wentz into Washington?
Yeah, so it's only two culprits. It's really Dan Snyder or it's Ron Rivera. But in this instance, because I think a lot of past times, like Dan Snyder has had a lot of say-so in the quarterback decisions and even big roster decisions. He's had a lot of say-so in some of these instances. But again, when we talk about how Ron got set up here in Washington, the only way he was really going to take the job to begin with is if he had a lot of control, some of which control he never had in Carolina. So when you see those type of things from Ron Rivera, and then on top of that, in terms of the report that I kind of mentioned earlier, he even clarified in the report that, and even after the report came out, that, look, I presented this opportunity to Dan Snyder and Tanya Snyder that he was a guy on our list that we wanted to target, and he gave the green light. So ultimately, when you talk about who was really responsible for bringing Wentz in, I've always said that, even after the report came out, I've always said it's hard to believe that Dan would even be majority or primarily responsible for that. This is a Ron thing. Look, he stood on the table for Ron. He stood on the table for Wentz. Like when Wentz got in after the trade, he told him in a video, the Commanders made a whole a well-edited video saying, hey, we want you. I want you to know that you're wanted here. Like, and all throughout the offseason, Jason Wright, team president, standing on the table for Carson Wentz. Ron Rivera talking about how impactful he can be to this offense and what he can do for this offense. It's a lot of influence and energy and excitement from the coaching staff and from Ron Rivera. This is a Ron Rivera thing. If I had to bet 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say Ron Rivera.
Quick follow-up on Wentz as far as it pertains to the game tonight. Reports out that his shoulder is kind of banged up. Do you think that could have any impact on the game tonight, on maybe trajectory or even play calling, depending on how healthy that shoulder really is?
That's actually a really good question. It depends, because I know during the week, and he only had 2 practices, there was reports mentioning that he was favoring the shoulder during the practice, and even still, they weren't necessarily having like a heavy practice. It was very light. Ron Rivera mentioned how light it was, but reporters, when they did have their opportunity out there, they said that he was favoring the shoulder a little bit. So to be honest with you, John, it'll be a storyline to follow. But if there is something in which that's really hindering him, the way that this season is going, I don't even think they're going. Because you got to remember too, part of this trade was depending on how the percentage of snaps he plays for Washington as well. So if they don't want to hit that 3rd round or that 2nd round item, then it's better off if you just sit him. So like if his shoulder really isn't doing well, or if it's impeding on the fact that the offense is struggling or something like that, or he isn't able to really hit his targets or anything like that, sure, they may try some shorter things and see if he can work, because he's not really using his legs that much either. So it's either his arm or get him out the game and see what Taylor Heineke can do, or see what Sam Howell can do. So it's, like I said, it's a really good question. It's something to monitor. But if you're asking me, I'm saying, look, that shoulder's not doing too good. All right, take a break. Take these 10 days. We're gonna go ahead and get Taylor in. We're gonna go get Sam Howell in, one of these guys, and we're gonna go ahead and keep it pushing. Take your break. Your shoulder's messed up. Keep it pushing.
And we'll see how it goes. Maybe he tries to warm that up some part through the game, and they just sit him and say, "Hey, this ain't working. We got to get you out of there." Yeah. We'll monitor the situation and see how he is dealing with that shoulder. Maybe he gets a little shot of something beforehand to make that pain go away too. So we'll see.
It'll be better for him in the long run. I'm telling you, like the way this trade is going, and just to be clear too, with the comments that he mentioned too, what also hurts Ron Rivera when he mentioned the comments about the reason why they're running forward. It wasn't even, it's not necessarily all pinned on Carson. Like that was a mistake. Like he accidentally threw Carson Wentz under the bus. And to be clear to everybody that's here watching, this was a byproduct of Ron really running out of answers as to why the team wasn't doing good. You can't, like I mentioned, you can't really use all these other excuses that you used your first 2 years. A lot of it stemmed from immaturity. A lot of it stemmed from health. A lot of it stemmed from not having a quarterback. When you have your quarterback, why would that be the first thing that you mention? It's not. Like, I think you just ran out of answers, buddy. So you can kind of see how I feel about Ron Rivera. A lot of people feel the same way within this area. It's been a lot of repeated messaging and things like that. So that quarterback response, John, was probably just something where it's like, we know you didn't have to go that way. You should have clarified, but now here you are. But yeah, I don't think I don't think it was really a huge problem from Ron. It was more so a slip in truth in terms of, how bad it's gotten from his standpoint.
Yeah, you give the media an inch, they're going to take a yard, though, on some of these storylines, especially in a hotbed like DC. Let's veer away from the quarterback position, though, because something great that every football fan can appreciate last week was the return of rookie Brian Robinson, who made his first appearance in a game since suffering a gunshot wound in an alleged carjacking before the season. How much of a lift can he be with this Washington run game? Because I believe he's named the starter. Basically, he's going to be the feature back. Can Bears fans expect this guy to be running on full cylinders, or is he going to be on a pitch count? How's he moving?
So he should be good. I think the biggest test was last week because the Tennessee Titans, man. I did throughout this week. It was a short week. I really just looked at how bad the run game was for Washington, like what the truth was, and truthfully, and it's kind of going to mess with how Washington plays today. Like the interior offensive line for Washington just isn't like where it needs to be right now from an execution standpoint, but also just from the type of players that they're utilizing. They're not on the same page, but also you have people that's just not necessarily strong enough at the point of attack. And while you're playing the Tennessee Titans, who are very good in the run, they have three or four good run defenders that really cause problems for the interior and really getting pushed off the ball. That is something that has been a problem for Washington throughout the entire season. Just trying to make sure that area, that the Andrew Norwell, the Nick Martins, to the three other centers that they're trying to use, and then Sadiq Charles and Trey Turner, those three guys, you're trying to make sure that you get some stability in there, and maybe things change against the Chicago Bears defense who has struggled and to stop the run. But ultimately, Brian Robinson, to your question, he's a dynamic back in the sense of he provides something for Antonio Gibson really doesn't, or in terms of like natural instincts, the vision that he has, but also the intuition that he has from a running back perspective and how he can really manipulate defenders on the second level, but also create his own lanes and things like that. He's a powerful back, but he also has really good balance too. So he's getting a lot of strong yards. He's getting a lot of yards that he's earned from himself. And what I mean that he's different from Antonio Gibson is not as patient as the runner as Brian Robinson is, but he's also not seeing things pretty clearly in that same vein from an actual vision standpoint, understanding where your hole is and understanding how you can get linebackers out of the hole that you intend to go to. Brian Robinson can do that. So when it comes to how he can play against the Chicago Bears, I think he can be an impactful player. And for Washington, they need to get the ball out of Carson Wentz's hands. 4 games this year where he's thrown over 40 passes. Washington is 1-3. And they lost the last game where they threw 38 times. So you have to understand that this is a very good opportunity against the Chicago Bears defense, who allows a lot of explosive plays. Or excuse me, let me be clear. They allow some explosive plays primarily on the ground, and you have to take advantage of that. You have to take advantage of that. So if I'm Scott Turner, if I'm Washington, I'm getting Brian Robinson at least 15 carries. I'm getting the running backs all together at least 30 carries.
Now, they could be relying heavily on that running game simply because everyone else is kind of banged up. No Jahan Dotson tonight. Can you take us through some of the weapons that Carson Wentz could be thrown to? Because I believe Logan Thomas isn't going to be playing either. So you still have Terry McLaurin. You still have Brown, who had some exciting splash plays there. But what can Bears fans expect as far as this Washington receiving core?
Well, to be honest with you, I'll start with the rookie, Cole Turner. So. When you mentioned Logan Thomas, is actually surprising because I don't have any ill will towards Logan Thomas. Okay, Logan Thomas he's been a playmaker in terms of what he can do at the catch point. He can make really strong catches. He's a contested catch guy, but he doesn't really create separation. So every time you're going to throw to him, you're going to be like, all right, I know he's covered, but I'm gonna give him a shot because I know he can make a play. That's the only thing. The only thing that you really got to hold for is you're going up against zone, because he can understand where the zone voids are, and he can create opportunities on that first and second level, whether it's going up the seam or whether it's just going on a crosser or something like that. But when you have Cole Turner, and I'll start with him, like I said, he's a guy who's much more athletic than Logan Thomas. He presents much more opportunities against both coverages, zone or man. So he has that natural, as he's a tight end now, but he has that natural wide receiver skills. That's where he came from. In Nevada, like that's what he used to play. He used to play wide receiver before he got converted to tight end. And he has these type of opportunities that he can present for Carson Wentz. And it's really going to come down to Carson Wentz giving him no shots. He had 3 targets last week, 0 catches, but on a 4th and 4, for Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders. You had Cole Turner isolated one-on-one on the short side of the field, and he's beating a defensive back down the field, and he has like 3 yards of separation, doesn't get the ball. So you're starting with Cole Turner from the tight end position. I'm looking forward to him. He may have a good day today, but then you have obviously Terry McLaurin. We know who he is. Everybody is kind of familiar with him. He's an explosive player. It really depends on how Scott Turner can utilize him, and also if Carson Wentz can really see. The mix with this one is when you have these slant flat concepts or opportunities to get him the ball at the short level within 5 yards. That's where the struggle comes in. Like, you can send him downfield all you want to. He's a vertical stem guy. He can take you full speed down the field. But what happens when that defense is playing over the top, giving help to Terry, rotating coverages to Terry, and now you're like, all right, well, how do I maneuver him in other ways? So I like what I'm seeing with the options of Cole. I like what I'm seeing with the options of Terry McLaurin, but it really just comes down on how Scott Turner can utilize these guys, and if Carson Wentz can really find them, and that's really the struggle. I would just say one more person, the underrated guy to think about, is Cam Sims, because I don't know what De'Ami Brown is actually hurt, and to what degree he'll play, I don't know. I know he's not inactive, but to what degree he'll play, I don't know. So Cam Sims is a guy you're going to see on the field a lot too, and he's the big play guy that was over the last 2 years in terms of giving him those jump ball opportunities from the receiver position. And he's the 6'5" big body guy. Think of like Mike Williams in Los Angeles. Like, he'll make those type of plays for you.
I want to go to another user question. Let's go to J2K, who says Washington's O-line and the Bears' D-line are both underwhelming. So who actually has the edge in this matchup? Can you give us a rundown of the offensive line if the Bears could create some opportunities there?
Look, your guys, if I'm not mistaken, you still got Robert Quinn. And at that point, I'm saying I'm lining Robert Quinn up on Cornelius Lucas, and I'm taking my chances there. I think that the best thing for the Chicago, to answer your question flat out, I think it's probably just as evenly matched. Like, I think this is one of the weeks where Washington can catch a break because they're struggling on the interior from both a run standpoint and also pass protection standpoint. But also, I'm not naive. Like, if everybody knows, Matt Eberflus has a history with Carson Wentz from last year. Like, they were on the same team. So there's going to be ways in which I can't even foresee how he can attack Carson Wentz and how he can attack this offense. Good point. But at the end of the day, what I will say is that if you're able to create some pressure using some now, what Detroit did, to be specific, they use a lot of man coverage. And then Philadelphia, same vein, they use a lot of man coverage to really confuse Carson Wentz, and they disguise coverages as well, especially at the line of scrimmage, to muddy things up for him. And that's kind of where you can really get in your bag if you want to attack and confuse Carson Wentz. So if you want to get some pressure, if you want to create some stress on this offensive line, it's kind of disguising your looks. That's kind of how you're going to do it. And don't stop doing it from quarter 1 to quarter 4. But I think it's going to be pretty evenly matched, like he asked.
Well, let's switch sides of the ball here real quick, because earlier this week, the Bears offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, had this to say about when he's game planning for opponents. I believe we have the clip.
Each week, you look at an opponent, right? And you look at them and you say, okay, where are their weaknesses and what have they had issues with? How can we exploit those? And then the second part is, like, where are their strengths and how can we avoid that, right?
So, 2-part question for you. What are the strengths of the Commanders' defense, and what are the weaknesses that the Bears could potentially exploit here?
It's a really good question. I think the strengths is the front seven at this point, really the defensive line. I think there's a lot of people, obviously Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. You have a couple guys emerging, and Daniel Wise. You have Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams emerging. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there are people that are game wreckers. I wouldn't confuse anybody. I don't want to confuse anybody, but they are emerging. But ultimately, you have those 3 guys, the first round picks on your team, who are really dominating in terms of, at least in the run game at the very least. And then you have Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen from an interior standpoint, who are dominating in both facets, run and pass, and that's really helping these guys out. But also you have Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb, who've been able to stack good games together. Those are your linebackers. So in terms of your strengths, is really the defensive line and the run defense, and how they've been playing over the past couple of weeks. Now, granted, I will say this. the offenses that they've been playing, I think probably the Tennessee Titans have probably been the strongest one in terms of like the willingness to run. And maybe after that is the Dallas Cowboys, but also the Dallas Cowboys are limited at quarterback. Right. So you don't have to really you don't have to game plan too much for Cooper Rush in terms of like he's a threat against the pass. But when you talk about the weaknesses, John, that's literally it. That's secondary. Like you can say, I can say everything I want in terms of like what the strengths are, and you don't have to do much for Cooper Rush. But at the end of the day, your secondary, when you have your breakdowns in communication, or you have a guy in William Jackson who's probably on the trade block and probably out of here soon, when you have these breakdowns and coverages, or even from the safety position, Bobby McCain had a big play last week that he gave up. He lost the ball on a deep bomb, and that was really the difference maker in terms of giving up that 21st point, that third touchdown for the Tennessee Titans. There's small stabs and picks that really bothers you. And that's kind of what it is. It's trying to eliminate those explosive plays. And 6 games in or 5 games in, John, they haven't been able to do it. That weakness is the secondary until it proves otherwise. But that's really it. You can really exploit that. And I think what really helps with a quarterback in Justin Fields is the fact that he does use his legs. He uses his legs to both take off, or he uses his legs to really put stress on the defense and stay disciplined in their coverage. And now I'm a guy who like Byron Pringle, and I understand he's on IR, but I think one of the things that, your receivers do well is also how they perform in the scramble drill. So if you're not able to really if you're not really able to defend that when the play breaks down, that's where opportunities lie as well for Justin Fields. And that's really what it is that secondary.
Sounds like there could be some opportunities for finally some big explosive plays out of that Bears offense, is what possibly Bears fans have been waiting for the entire season. Let's just talk about the fact that this is a Thursday night game. I personally hate it when the Bears are in prime time because my friends outside of Chicago can just roast me throughout the entire time. But I have to think that going into this, the away team has to go through a lot to get ready for this game. Not just is it a short week, but you got to dedicate time to traveling here. What are your thoughts on Thursday night football?
First off, John, we're in the same boat with the teams. I'm all, but listen though, I'm all for prime time. I'm all for Thursday. I'm all for Monday night games because that means I can at least kick my feet up on Sunday, watch all the games without no care in the world. I don't have to worry about the team. I don't have to worry about anything else. I can go to a bar if I want to. We don't have to cover it. We don't have to cover the games. We don't have to sit down during the 1 o'clock and miss a whole bunch of games covering the Bears, covering the Commanders. We don't have to do none of that. But that's really how I make of these Thursday night games. And when it comes to from a team aspect, I can't speak too much of it because it's been how long has it been? You can help me out this in terms of how long they've been doing the Thursday night games now. Like I think there's been a ritual or a routine that coaches have been able to develop and really put in place for all teams, all experienced at this point. So they have their way of really preparing. Like I said earlier, when it came to Carson Wentz in his shoulder, they didn't have like an intense practice. They had a lot of walkthroughs and things like that. So it really just comes down to how you prepare from a film standpoint and making sure that your players are ready to go. And that starts probably like a week or two, I would imagine. I'm guessing, but I would imagine that starts like a week or two before you even get to this Thursday night game.
Mm-hmm. I want to go to one more user question. This one again is from St. Omni. Jamal, what is the feedback from the fans as far as the name change from the Washington football team to the Commanders? I mean, for me personally, I just feel like there could have been a lot of more cool things they could have named this team, but I guess Commanders is neat. What's your personal feeling? What do you think the fans' general feeling are about the name change?
Oh my goodness, Saint, it's a loaded question. So I'm gonna try to attack it from a whole. I'll give you some perspective. Put it this way. I used to before I fully did Hogs Haven. I've been with Hogs Haven since like 2017, but before I've done other shows and other podcasts as well. And one of my former co-hosts, Steve, shout out to Steve, man, good guy, but he's with the Hog Style, and he was committed, like all in Washington Redskins, all in Washington everything. And as soon as they stripped that name and went to Washington football team, he got conflicted in a negative way. He wasn't sure what was going on with his team. He's also an older guy. So for me, I'm 28. I'll be 29 in a month. But he's probably in his 40s, early 40s, if not mid 40s. And So he knows what winning is. He knows, he's seen all these championships.
Mm-hmm.
So like he has a history with the Redskins, and there's a lot of people out there like Steve who became conflicted with the fact that they stripped the name from a lot of people, and whether it's right or wrong, that's not the conversation here. It's just the fact that from a fan standpoint, you know that you're losing your team now, and for whatever reason, it doesn't feel right. So now you're going into the Washington football era knowing that there's an inevitable change after that. Like it's not just sticking at Washington football team, it's going to another team. So when you see the Commanders, you see when you see that whole rebrand, it's like, all right, this isn't my mob anymore. And he's a guy, and when I mentioned Steve, he's a guy who is completely, he's not there no more. He has no connection to this team. And there's other people out there like him. There's other people out here who embrace the name change. There's other people out here who are still like, I don't like the name, but I still have feelings for this Washington team. I still have memories with this Washington team, so I'm gonna rock out with them regardless. So there's so many different layers about how people are feeling about this name change. I'm of the mindset where it's like, I love ball. I'm from the city. I'm from Washington, D.C. area. Like it's going to be hard for me to just sit here and say I'm done with the team. And that's not talking about the off the field. It's really hard to really like the team from a whole overall standpoint with everything that's going on. Like it's never just football. Yeah. But when it comes to just like looking at these guys on Sundays, Mondays, or Thursdays, or even Saturdays, I'm here for it, man. I need a winner. We need winners.
I was gonna say, did you grab any Washington football team gear? Because I feel like that's going to be worth something in like 30, 40 years, because it's a team that literally existed for like 1 year when they were just that layover year where they were just the Washington football team, or maybe it was 2 years they were the Washington football team.
I got a couple hoodies, 2 years. Yeah, I got a couple hoodies.
2 years where there was just like that 2 year span where there's just Washington football team. It's like that could be a collector's item at some point because the team only existed for a little bit of time. But another guy that could be on some borrowed time, although he may have a dossier on every other owner in the entire league, is Dan Snyder. It'd be remiss if I didn't at least ask one question, but I want to ask from the fans' point of view. I care to see how it unravels, but what are the fans going through as far as do they want Dan Snyder to just sell the team and be done with all of this off the field stuff, or are they in his corner? What's the general temperature in Washington when it comes to their owner being in the news cycle more than the team, really?
I got more perspective for you, John. I got another guy. My trainer, one of my trainers, he was a Skins fan, and he loved these guys primarily because his family's from the area and they loved him, but he was here too. But after so much time had went by with Dan Snyder as an owner, this is a point in which 2009 to 2011, that's when my trainer stopped being a fan. This is before the RG3 era, everybody. So he quit before that. He quit before RG3 and didn't come back. RG3 did not convince him to come back. He was done. So I think the damage in which Dan Snyder has really put on this team, was put on his fan base, and really stained the organization over years and decades of time. Like he's been here for 2 decades now. It's really put a toll on the fan base. And I think John, have you ever been to FedEx Field?
No, I've driven past it, but never actually saw a game there.
So if you've ever been, if Chicago ever has an opportunity to come to FedEx Field, and anybody in the comments in the chat, if you all ever have an opportunity to come to FedEx Field, go have fun in DC, have fun in the area, and go, and you'll understand why. Because when you get there, it'll be like a home game. Like it's literally that bad in FedEx Field. You don't really have a home field advantage. The away teams are really overshadowing the supportive Commander fans that come in and week out to that stadium, and it's a byproduct of Dan Snyder and how he's really treated this team and gone down, and it's gone down the drain. So yeah, they wanted him gone a very long time ago, and at this point, that story with ESPN that came out today, just low everybody. While it's damning to you all, it really means nothing in terms of what Washington fans and Washington people who cover the team, like what they're going through. It's really just an update. Like, hey, I know you all don't like this guy, but here's just a reminder why you shouldn't like him even more. But carry on. He's still going to be there. But I just want you to know there's some more things you should know about Dan Snyder. That's really what that article is to us.
It's, if nothing else, they're a reality TV show at this point. That's why the Commanders are continuously in the news.
It reminds me of Succession, man. Do you see?
Love that show.
I love it.
Show.
I love it too.
Yes.
And it reminds me of Succession in terms of like just all the politics behind everything. Like it's crazy. They're counting numbers trying to get them out, but even still, they're not going to move forward to putting a vote together. It really comes down to the stadium, and even still, like he may get help at the end of the day. It's so much, but it really reminds me of Succession, man. I love that show, and that was the first thing when I read that article. I was like, oh my goodness. This is exactly what it reminds me of.
Just some backroom dealings and just
Yes.
getting spying on people, getting information on people. It's a show within the show, really. It's crazy. So we'll see how that plays out. It's never a dull moment in DC, I guess. But Jamual, before we get you out of here, I got to ask you a prediction on this game because I believe the spread shrunk all the way down to like 1 point, and the Bears are getting 1 point just for basically being at home, and maybe that's actually favoring Washington because usually you get 3 points for being at home. So, how do you think this plays out? And trust me, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings if you pick the Commanders to win. So, how do you think this plays out?
Look, there's one. I saw a tweet earlier today that said, Washington. If Washington is firing on all cylinders, then Washington should win. And the first thing that I said in my head was, when have you seen them fire on all cylinders this entire season? It has never happened. Even when they beat Jacksonville, they basically scored in 2 quarters. Philly, they got basically shut out. Dallas, a touchdown. Like you've never seen them play a full game really. Up until last week where they competed throughout from start to finish. To answer your question, I ain't picking Washington. And you probably if you had me on for the last 11 weeks or 10 weeks, you ain't gonna see me pick Washington. It just is what it is at this point. I got the Bears winning 21-17. I think that there's going to be something up our sleeve that I really don't anticipate Chicago doing, in the sense of like they have history, they have some information on Carson Wentz and how they can really defend against them. And that's probably going to limit Washington in terms of how they can move the ball in the air. Ultimately, if they can run it on the ground and sustain it and sustain drives and convert on their third downs. They were 9% on third down last week, John. That was 9%. I think they were 1 for 11. Like
not great.
They went from a top 10 third down offense to bottom 12 in a matter of a week. So yeah, it's bad, man. And granted, like I said, they played a good Titans defense, but ultimately, it's hard to really choose a team who can't sustain anything and really hasn't put anything together yet. So 21-17 Chicago.
We like to hear that, but also we're used to the kiss of death on this show too. When people pick the Bears, sometimes things implode. So we'll see. Well,
hopefully I'm right then. I mean, hopefully I'm right in that Washington mess around and get a win.
You know what? I just want it to be a good game because everyone's talking about how crappy of a game this is and how disappointed they are that this is the Thursday night game. I just want a great game would go a long way.
Let's get the shootout.
Yeah, give me a shootout. Okay, let's blow the over out of the water. Make it a 45-41 game. I'll gladly take that. But hey, before we let you go, we got a lot of NFL fans, not just Bears fans, that tune into here. So can you tell us what you got going on, how people can see your work, and how they can connect with you on social media?
Absolutely. So the Twitter handle, and appreciate you again, John, and everybody for having me on. The Twitter handle is in the bio. Let Maul tell it. I have all my work on there. I do break down film, and I put the clips on there at times. But I also have a YouTube channel, the Trapper Dive YouTube channel, where I also have another, I guess, basically a YouTube channel show outside of the Hogs Haven podcast. So you'll see film breakdowns on there. And I have co-hosts who do the Washington Commander stuff as well. So we'll be live post game after this game. Hopefully talking about a Washington win, but. Fingers crossed. But outside of that, everything else is Hogs Haven. You can find my work there. You can look up the podcast as well, Hogs Haven Podcast, everything, all podcast platforms. So appreciate you all again.
Absolutely. Jamual, thank you so much for being on. And like I tell everyone that comes on our show, we'll talk to you again whenever the Bears and Commanders are inevitably in the NFC Championship game. How's that sound?
Hey, I look. Well, first of all, I have conflicted feelings about Ron Rivera, but we'll see. We'll see, man. I'll leave it at that. Positive vibes only. That's it.
Absolutely. Thanks again for being on. We'll be right back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
Ellis Hall, since I came here, has been expanded twice, and both times after we were gone, by the way. So we never got it. But I mean, it was tiny.
Do you think that Olin Kreutz would politely ask you to leave the weight room because it was so crowded?
I told you what Olin used to say to me.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
No, and that was at 5 o'clock when there's no players around.
Olin,
Get the f out of my weight room. And I go,
I think I got a commercial here. All right, welcome back to Buffone 55. My name is Aldo Gandia, and this is Buffone, or B55, we call it here. This is where I ask John 5 questions, and each of the 5 questions, he has 55 seconds to respond, and we do that in honor of his uncle, Doug Buffone, who played 15 seasons with the Chicago Bears and wore number 55. Mr. John Buffone, are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready. I'm still a little tired from last week, but it's a short week. Everyone's on a short week. We gotta get it done.
Everyone's on a short week. Yeah, you're right about that. Okay, so we know your history with the Bears and prime time games, but this is a Thursday night game, John. Do you still have the same feelings about Thursday night games that you do about Monday night football and Sunday night football? You got 55 seconds to answer this one. Go.
Well, I'm still not thrilled. They're on prime time and still open to national scrutiny. Plus, I'm still probably not going to get to bed until 1 a.m. because I live on the East Coast and I got to do a post-game show. So, no, I don't prefer this. However, when it's a Thursday game, it does come with some perks. Usually that perk is it's Thanksgiving and I can gorge myself out of a Bears-related depression, but that's not really the case tonight. The fact is the Bears game is the first game of the week, which means we get it done early and we create a stress-free Sunday. We can sit back and watch all of the football on Sunday and not be worried or anxious or mad because our team already played. Even when they play on Sunday night or Monday night, we have a certain level of anxiety hanging over our heads, thinking about the game, knowing that our team plays in the second to last or last game of the week. This is kind of just like ripping the Band-Aid off. If they win, we'll take that happy attitude into the weekend. If they lose, we have plenty of time to forget about it.
John, you're so lucky you're not married because I have to clean out the garage on Sunday because there's no Bears game.
Yeah, that's, be honest, I ain't going to be doing that.
Do you have a special recollection on a nationally televised game that was just god-awful and that you just didn't want to leave the house, answer the phone, or anything like that?
Yes, listen, I think it was 2014. I think it might have been the last Trestman year where they were playing the Eagles on Monday night. It was late in the season. It was I was in the fantasy championship game. I had Martellus Bennett and Alshon Jeffrey, but the Bears were getting blown out by the Eagles so badly that they pulled the starters in the fourth quarter, and I lost my fantasy championship game by 2 points because the Bears were so bad in that game that they pulled all the players out. They were playing second and third stringers, and I had to watch my team get obliterated on national TV and watch a stagnant fantasy score with 15 minutes left in the game. Just watch them like, they're not going back in, are they? They're not going back in, are they? And I lost by 2 points in a full PPR league. If it would have been even remotely competitive, I would have won my fantasy championship game. Just another way that the Bears have let me down throughout the year.
Well, I'm not going to ask you how much money you lost, but I can tell by the amount of veins popping out of your neck, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, it's substantial.
Let's get on to question number 2. Last week, we had a more positive outlook after the Vikings lost than we did with the Giants loss, mainly because of the team's resiliency and the progress of Justin Fields. There's my phone again, the
1995 office phone.
I thought I turned it off. Come on, Aldo, get it.
Are you getting a fax too?
My page? Where's my page?
Am I getting paged? Yeah.
Let's try this again. So last week we had a more positive outlook after the Vikings loss than we did with the Giants loss, mainly because of the team's resiliency and the progress of Justin Fields. what would you need to see tonight, John, for it to be considered a successful effort? 55 seconds are on the clock, and go.
Okay, so I've said this before, but this season is kind of on a sliding scale week to week for me. I felt a bit more positive after the Vikings loss than I did after the Giants loss, but I don't think a moral victory is going to do it for me tonight. This is a game that I circled before the season. I said the Bears are going to win this game because, Washington looks like they're kind of a mess. This is a game the Bears need to win, and a win will show progress because obviously that will mean they scored enough points to defeat their opponent. It's pretty simple. I don't think I'm delving into kick-a-guard's theories on existentialism here, but the root of this season is monitoring Justin Fields' progression as the franchise quarterback. So against a team like Washington, if he does play well, there's really no reason to think the Bears won't win this game unless there's a massive defensive implosion. So this week, if they lose, I'm not sure we're going to have that same chipper, positive, hopeful attitude we had last week after they rallied and nearly beat the Vikings.
I'm with you on that, Dan. Stan. I'm thinking about
whoever I am, yeah.
Dan Aguirre, because he's been paging me incessantly.
Short week for everyone.
I'm with you because David Kaplan had a poll up today and said, what's more important to see Justin Fields perform well tonight or a Bears victory? And I thought to myself, well, aren't they really tied?
They're together on this one.
I mean, I know this defense can be putrid at times, but I got to believe if Justin Fields has a 300-yard passing game and 2 or 3 touchdown passes, I got to believe that is a recipe for victory, and that defeat isn't in the cards. But who knows? It could be one of those blowout games, high-scoring games where the defense really lets us down. I highly doubt it. It is supposed to be very, very windy at Soldier Field tonight, so that could impact scoring. So we'll see on that.
Yeah, I think that if Justin Fields plays well, it's just hard for me to imagine that the defense is going to play so badly, which I don't think they're going to, but that Carson Wentz in a depleted, Washington team is going to just hang 35 on them. I just, maybe it can happen. I just don't see it happening.
There you go. All right. Question 3. We saw improvement last week. Justin Fields had his highest QB rating in the season. If they're going to be successful tonight, they're going to have to build on that performance like we've been talking about. So give me one player, just one, you think is going to break out tonight, and it can't be Justin Fields because we already know that's going to happen. You got 55 seconds, and the clock starts now.
Well, I've been waiting for this since week 1, so why not tonight? I'm ready for Darnell Mooney to be a showstopper. I've always had high hopes for this guy, and he flashed potential last week with that ridiculous 39-yard catch that he had. So we've seen some plays where he and Justin Fields it just looks like they weren't on the same page, but those were opportunities for big chunk plays or possibly even touchdowns. Maybe that chemistry that we keep hearing about finally sparks up tonight, and Mooney goes for 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Right now, he only has 10 catches on the year for 173 yards and 0 touchdowns. That's averaging 2 catches for 35 yards. That needs to change. But he needs to be that big play guy that will stretch out the defense and maybe even create some spaces for other guys to work and operate in. I don't know how much can really change on a short week. Who knows how much they've really been able to tinker with things, but hopefully this tandem, I still have hope that this tandem can be a force in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you on Darnell Mooney. What we've seen of him recently tells me that he's going to start climbing the ladder. I thought at the beginning of the season that he could potentially be a number 1 receiver. I, of course, had serious doubts after the first 3 games, but what I've seen recently tells me that perhaps he could be a 1A. I was reading an article about wide receivers. It was Brad Biggs in the Chicago Tribune. He spoke with a national scout, and he said there's only like 4 or 5 number 1 receivers in the league, and there's a lot of 1As and 1Bs. And Darnell Mooney could fall into that 1A, 1B category. So we'll see. Do you think that Mooney could achieve that level of being a primetime type of player?
Yeah, so he was able to operate really well last year, even though Allen Robinson did not have a good year. He was probably getting most teams' number 1 cornerbacks, and so Mooney was able to operate against the 2, and maybe he was under the radar, and he was a real force. And obviously, that would be the ideal situation where he is that 1A guy, opposite of some other big-bodied receiver. I'm not positive he could be that stalwart guy that you build the wide receiving core around, which is why I continuously say maybe they make a trade in the offseason for a disgruntled big time. I keep saying Mike Evans just because I would love to see that. But Mike Evans comes and then he's the big bodied possession guy. And then you have Darnell Mooney, the blazing guy, as your number 2. And then you draft the guy. I think that would be an incredibly big upgrade to the wide receiving core. But who knows? I mean, it's a long season. We'll see how Mooney progresses. As of right now, not so much. My confidence took a little bit of a jolt in the last few weeks. But like you said, I do see some of that potential in the last weeks where it's just like if they were just get on the same page, there could be some explosive plays there in the arsenal.
Yep. Let's see it tonight, baby. All right, number 4. Let's move on to the defense. Bears fans would love to see this unit play 4 quarters, a complete game, rather than waiting until the third quarter to get things sorted out.
The adjustment.
Who is the one player on the defensive side? Just one again. I know this is tough, but who is the one player you would love to see step up tonight? The 55-second clock starts now.
Well, let's talk about a guy that we thought could get traded before the beginning of the season because his stock probably wasn't going to get any higher. Of course, I'm talking about Robert Quinn. Clearly, he's not quite on the pace that he was on last year when he broke the Bears sack record with 18.5. However, he did have 12 sacks in the final 8 games last year, so maybe he's just getting warmed up and things are going to intensify in the latter part of the season. Through 5 games this year, though, he only has 1 sack and 6 tackles, and he just isn't putting up the numbers that fans and I'm sure the Bears staff were hoping for. Common thinking was moving to the 4-3 defense was actually going to benefit Quinn because that is the system he has had the most success with throughout his career, but something just isn't really clicking quite yet. So let's hope he can use that freakish bend to get around the edge tonight and get after Carson Wentz, whether that be through creating sacks or just forcing him to uncomfortably throw the ball into coverage and potentially causing some of those big-time turnovers the Bears could use.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you know what? I would love for all of this young defensive backfield to really turn it on. And I know I'm going against my own question and not giving you one guy, but if we can get a concerted, cohesive effort by the Bears defensive backfield and get some turnovers and these questions about Kyler Gordon start to dissipate, because I really have a lot of hope and expectations for Kyler. So if this defensive backfield takes another step forward, and by the way, I gotta give Eddie Jackson some props, man. Sure. He's having a great season, and he's doing a good job with these young players. It's very, very, very tough to be the veteran in a defensive backfield where you've got young players, and then you've got young players coming in for the young player who got injured. It's not an easy task.
No, I agree. There's a lot of there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of growing pieces, and sometimes you like to see that evolution where you were the young buck, but then you got to take the reins as the leader on a defense and usher in a new era. And hopefully, I think Eddie Jackson's doing a pretty good job of that. And I think he feels very comfortable in this defense, opposite of Jaquan Brisker, of course.
Mm-hmm. In the chat area, we've got J2K pulling for Justin Jones. We've got Laz pulling for Brisker. Mr. Payton is pulling for good old number 9-4. Also number 85 on the offense, and Caesar is hoping for Kyler Gordon to get a pick 6 and
that'd be great.
Fumble. That would be outstanding. Yeah. All right, let's get to our final question here. You know what? I saw a couple of comments, John, in the chat room about that those commentators did not like these orange uniforms. So I want to get your thoughts. The complete blaze orange helmets. What is your assessment of it? I think I got a picture of it. So in case you haven't seen it, you haven't. But here it is. That's the look for tonight. So what is your assessment of this orange look? Are you for it? Are you against it? You got 55 seconds on this one, and I'll start the clock as soon as I re-rack it and go.
See, as soon as that clock goes, see, this is why I do this show. In-depth, hard-hitting, impactful analysis on football jerseys. Look, orange is my favorite color, so you're not going to hear any complaints out of me that the Bears are wearing orange helmets and orange jerseys tonight. They wore those blaze orange jerseys previously. They kind of got popular in the mid-2000s. I bought a Rex Grossman one that was on sale for like $3, and, you get what you pay for. I still have it right here. But I like them. I like bright color, so I'm all about it. As far as my favorite color scheme, though. I just want to see them wear white pants, white jerseys, and that blue helmet with the white C. Is that so much to ask? I want to see those pristine-looking white jerseys get tackled on a grass field in the mud and see them get dirty as all hell, and you can see who really played in the game. But that helmet with the white C, I don't know why I'm so drawn to it. It's really not that different, but I absolutely love it.
I love it too. I am a little bit surprised. That is hideous looking. As
I'm telling you, I got this his last year in Chicago. I saw this on the rack. I was like, man, this could be the year he turns into an MVP. And I look at the price tag, and this is what about 2006 or 7 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, oh, it's on sale for $14. It's pretty. They knew what they had. They knew exactly what they had.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I can't believe I actually still have. I told Danny Shimon on the postgame show last week. At one point, I had to turn this into a Jimmy Clausen jersey, so I put tape across the name there because Jimmy Clausen actually had to start a few games for the Bears. So this was a Jimmy Clausen jersey for about 3 weeks, yeah. Got a lot of wear out for just, $14-15. I still have it 15 years later. Not sure why, but I have it.
I gotta tell you, I'm shocked that orange is your favorite color. How did that happen?
I'm not sure. It's not just because of the Bears either. It's just I just from as a young child, I just loved orange. I just wear orange. And it just so happens I was when I played t-ball, I got put on the orange team as a 5-year-old. Maybe I was drawn to that. That was my first real athletic experience as a 4 or 5-year-old playing t-ball in my orange jersey. But even my car is orange. My Jeep is orange, and so it's like I love orange. I can't tell you why. My boxing gloves are orange. My bag is orange. So it's maybe it's a weird obsession. Maybe it's a very calm, warm, healthy color. Maybe that's I'm just drawn to that.
Maybe. All right, you want to get straight into Buffone's basement, not take a break?
The hell with it, because we're about 20 minutes from kickoff. It starts at 8:15 for me, 7:15 for you. So let's just jump right into Buffone's basement because there's a lot of different things going on here. Looks like N'Keal Harry is inactive tonight. I know a lot of people were kind of excited about him getting on the field, and I am too, just because of the state of the receiving core. However, like I said last week, I'm not sure on a short week that was the right time to really activate your guy off the IR. What are your thoughts on that?
Totally agree. Based on the comments I heard this week when Luke Getsy says, it's going to be a while before he can rock and roll, but he's been focused with the mental aspect. I had a feeling that he was never really in serious question to play today, Thursday. I think that what's going to happen, he's going to benefit from this mini bye. He'll get back onto the practice field and see a lot of snaps. And so I expect to see him play next week. He's a big body receiver. My concern with him is that he never really used that big body to great effect with the Patriots. And in fact, I saw highlights of him just looking like a goofball on some of these plays that he should have out physicaled, for lack of a better word, his cornerback. So hopefully he's turned that around. I did see him in preseason at the Hylas Hall at the camp. And there were a couple of plays where he looked extraordinary. And in particular, there was a play on an end around. He was lined up to the left of the quarterback and then came right and was running right at us. And it appeared like everyone in the defense was saying, yeah, let's get out of the way. Let's let this, because he reminded me a lot of Cordero Patterson. So that's going to be a nice weapon. The only other big receivers on this team are Cole Kmet, the tight end, and Equinemius St. Brown. So a big body could do Justin Fields some good, but I'm not sure, really how effective. Apparently Ryan Poles thinks so because he was willing to give up one of his treasured draft picks. So we'll see closely. I'm just glad that the injury wasn't serious enough to derail the entire seation.
Yeah, and I was scrolling back because I do have one contact in New England who covers the Patriots, and I asked him for kind of just a quick spark notes of N'Keal Harry whenever the trade went down. This is back whenever the trade went happen. It said slow, long speed and quickness. Only positive trait to his game is a contested catch, which doesn't happen all the time. But also a very good blocker. So it seems like Poles and Eberflus love those wide receivers that can run block. So we'll see. sometimes a change of scenery. The guy was a high draft pick for a reason. And the college game doesn't always translate to the pro game. I'm not trying to say that one equivalates to one or the other, but you'd love to see a guy just get another chance who had a lot of hype around him. That hype's not here, really. I mean, that we really like we see him play, and we're curious to see what can happen, but we don't have the pressure on him that a first rounder does on a team. So we're hoping to get something out of this kid, but we're certainly not thinking that he's going to be the future. He's the number one receiver for Chicago to become. We're just trying to see what he has left. And speaking of receivers, whenever you have a struggling receiving core, the rumors fly like crazy. And as soon as Matt Rule gets canned in Carolina, the rumors start swirling. The Bears need to go after DJ Moore. Get on the phone now. Or Terrence Marshall Jr. You got to go get the young guy. You go get him. This is an opportunity for the Bears to potentially go for because the Panthers could be having a liquidation sale for whenever the new coach and GM comes. Personally, I think that they're probably not going to trade anything until they get the new GM or a new head coach in to see, hey, do you want these guys or not? But we'll see what they actually want to do, what that liquidation sale could or could not be. Do you have any thoughts or do you have any positive outlook on what the Bears could potentially do in the trade market for a wide receiver? Because we talked about this before, but this is just another one of those, rungs in the ladder where it's just like, oh, now there's a possibility of a seller in Carolina. Do you think that the Bears could potentially be active there?
I would be shocked if the Panthers wanted to move this guy. He's got a really friendly contract that he just extended. There's only like a couple $100,000 due him the rest of the season, and then next year is the highest of the 3 remaining seasons in the contract that he is owed. That's $20 million, and then it kicks back down to $16 million and $16 million. So he's tied up for a while, and this team is going to need wide receivers. It's likely that they're probably going to be targeting a quarterback in the draft, and so why not give that young quarterback DJ Moore, one of those 1A, 1B receivers? And I ran a poll today asking this question: if the Bears season ended today, how many starting positions would you like to see replaced with a new starter? And 43%, almost 44% said 7 to 9 players. And 25% said 10 or more players. So, John, if these fans really think that we need that many players, are you really going to trade away a couple of draft picks for a guy? I don't think so. I don't think that's the way Ryan Poles is thinking. He doesn't want to, give up these high draft assets for a guy who's already going to come in with an expensive contract. I truly believe the way he wants to build this team is through the draft and then only spend money in free agency if they need those key players to get them over the hump. I don't see a trade involving draft picks on our horizon.
Yeah, it just seems like Poles is much more into the acquiring draft assets than he is spending them. But eventually, we keep talking about all of this cap space that the Bears are going to have next year, and you're wondering where they're going to spend it. And as it's been well documented on this show, the free agents in the wide receiver market are just atrocious going into this year. There is really no big fish to be had there. I think the biggest name is probably Allen Lazard, maybe, and even that's not gonna, that's not overly sexy. And whenever you're like we talked about before, when you're the one pretty good asset in a really shallow pool, someone's going to overpay for you because you're the only game in town. And I don't see Ryan Poles giving, $20 million a year, $22 million a year to Allen Lazard on a, 4 or 5 year contract. So I think that it's a tough situation because you have to surround Justin Fields with weapons next year, one way or another. You have to see what you have in this kid, and you're going to get an all right evaluation this year, but you're certainly not going to be able to see what he can fully do because the weapons just aren't there. So next year, you have to find a way to improve the weapons around him. I think they draft a wide receiver, but is that going to be enough to have a rookie wide receiver in there with Darnell Mooney and probably Cole Kmet? And I think did St. Brown sign a 2-year deal here? I'm not sure.
I think it's a 1-year deal, but
I thought maybe one of them signed a 2-year deal. either Pringle or Brent St. Brown. Either way, it's inconsequential here because you need to be able to put something around Justin Fields next year, and the cards just aren't really in his favor right now as far as free agents go. So, if you get an absolute steal, if the Panthers are just like, and I once again don't see it happening, but if the Panthers are like, you give us, this year's third rounder and next year's third rounder. And
yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
And then we'll eat that salary because, like you said, it's kind of a team-friendly deal. Yeah, we'll eat that because I mean, what did they give up for Brandon Marshall? Was it 2/3? Because he was kind of a behavioral issue, but it was like two early picks, but there was no first rounders involved or anything of that nature. So I think that if a deal you can't refuse, you have the cash for it, but I don't see it happening. And the same with Terrence Marshall Jr., who was a second round pick last year. I don't think they're gonna give up on that guy because he has it doesn't get much cheaper than a rookie contract, especially a non-first rounder. So that's I just don't see it happening. But that's the wide receiver storyline. We talked about this a little bit and in the first B55 where it was like, do the Bears need to win this game? Do they have to win this game? I think that there's layers to that. They have to win this game because they're going to make a playoff run? No. But as far as winning the games that are winnable games on your schedule, which there aren't that many, do you think that puts a bigger importance on a game like this? Because you look at the schedule and they do have some more winnable games, maybe Atlanta and the Jets, and maybe they might be playing New England without Mac Jones. And so there are going to be some winnable games. Detroit's on there, of course, but there we got the spaceship graphic. I love this. Good. So you look at the schedule and you have this game on Thursday night, and you got a bunch of time before New England, and you don't know if Mac Jones is going to be there. Dallas looks pretty good right now. You're not sure if Cooper Rush or Dak's going to be there. Miami, Tua could potentially be back by that time. So you look at the real winnable games there, and towards the end of the season, it does not get very friendly.
No.
Green Bay, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and you kind of get a little reprieve there at Detroit, which won't be easy. And then you finish with Minnesota, so they could potentially end the year on a 5-game losing streak or losing 4 out of 5. Right. So you got to make some hay now whenever you have Washington, potentially depleted New England, and then back-to-back weeks in 11 and 12 when you have the Falcons and the Jets. So as far as your opinion goes, is this one of those like, hey, this is a really important game to win?
Yeah, I always like to look at the quality of wins and the quality of losses. So if, I know people are going to throw apples at me, but if they lose the game in a really highly competitive fashion, and I see progress on the part of primarily the quarterback and then some of the other young players, and primarily I mean by that are key players that will help make the rebuild easier, like Braxton Jones, Larry Borum. If those two tackles prove to us, that this season that they are the tackles of the future, that's going to help this rebuild, accelerate this rebuild really fast. And so if we start to get answers, no matter what the score is, there will be a certain amount of satisfaction. Listen, I don't want to lose. I don't want to be out of the playoffs this season, but I do understand what Ryan Poles is doing. He's blown it up. He's totally blown it up with the idea that this is the best way to rebuild a team. You're going to have now financial control over your team. You're going to develop your own players with your own culture and so forth. I like all that, but it is painful. It is painful. So while I hate to say I would be okay with a loss, I actually would if Justin Fields throws up 300 yards, 3 touchdown passes. He's not sacked multiple times, maybe with just once or stuff, and those tackles look good, and some other young players on defense, Kyler Gordon and guys like that start to show the promise that we've been praying for.
So I'm really good at asking for people's opinions on topics in which I don't have one of my own. So, I'm just going to throw this one at you. Would you rather lose a high-scoring game where Justin Fields throws for 275 yards, has 2 touchdowns, maybe has 2 picks, and the Bears end up losing a 28-25 game, 28-24 game, or they pull out a 13-3 win where Washington looks really bad and the Bears maybe get a defensive touchdown, but they do pull a win out of that one. Which way do you fall on that one?
Well, geez, you don't have an answer on this.
I told you I don't have an opinion, so because that's hard for me to think about, because it's like, do you really sacrifice a win for that? But you want to think long term. I'm trying to be practical about it, because we know that the Bears aren't really going anywhere. But at the same time, winning can be a culture. You can build a culture on winning, and winning by any means necessary. So But if you see a lot of progression out of your potential franchise quarterback and you lose a high-scoring shootout, that's promising too going in. So I'm not sure.
I am going to slightly lean in favor of taking the victory because you actually convinced me with the words you just used, is building a culture of winning. And there's still a hell of a lot of football left to go. And I truly believe that the progress we saw last week from Justin and some of the other players is just going to continue. And so there are going to be bumps. There may be a couple of blowouts. When we played the Buffalo Bills on Christmas Day.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Exactly. So as painful as it will be, I'm anticipating more so than any other season in recent memory, John. I am prepared for the season. I'm prepared for the disappointments. I don't want to. It's like, going to the doctor and they're telling you, yeah, we're going to perform one of those operations that you're not going to like. It's like that kind of thing. So, but I do agree that you got to get that operation done. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I have to keep reminding myself of what the expectations are, what we're really looking for, and what is actually involved in a rebuild year. No one thought that the Bears were going to be contenders this year. I don't think anyone had, these illusions that they were Super Bowl contenders this year. So this is the sucky part of that, where you have to endure a season of this, and then you're reacting week by week. If they lose a game, you're like, they suck, blow it up. But it's just like, okay, let's look at this holistically. We knew this was going to be part of this. They make a bad play. It's like, oh, the play caller sucks. Fire the coach into the sun. Like that, we knew this was going to be a part of this. And I catch myself falling victim to that a lot, because football season, you wait 7-8 months for it, and then you're like, I can't wait for football season. Oh wait, my team's not going anywhere. And so it's really difficult for something that you emotionally invest in so much to just be like, okay, don't get too upset about losses. When it's like, okay, first of all, we're Bears fans, and we're tired of hearing about next year. There's a reason why patience is not so much a virtue anymore in Chicago, because it's like, look what patience has gotten us in the last 37 years. Not so much. So so I understand that. But also I have to almost like take myself out of my own body and be like, hey, rebuild year, a lot of things moving. Wait, 2023. I know I hate saying wait till next year. I hate saying 2023 is going to be different, but that's what we have to go with, because that's obviously the plan. The plan was not to try to throw a bunch of Band-Aids on things like we saw with the last regime, where it was clearly they had a window, it closed real quickly, and they tried to pry it open an inch by overspending and kicking the can down the road a little bit more. They're still paying Andy Dalton. They're still paying Danny Trevathan. They're still paying Jimmy Graham. And there's a lot of people with void years and dead money on the books that just have to get cleared. That has to get off the books. And you can thank the last regime for that. But Ryan Poles didn't do that. And he took on a situation where he knew the first year was going to be bumpy. But the second and third year, he can start creating this team in the way that he wants to create it. So I'm trying to hold on to that, where I'm not jumping to a lot of these snap reactions where I'm just like, why the hell aren't they winning? Or why the hell isn't this working? Or, oh my God, they suck. It's like this. It's that snap reaction as a fan, because we're fanatics. That's what we do. We jump to snap reactions on things. But also to have that holistic look at this, that's tough. It's just tough for me. I'm sure it's tough for a lot of fans.
Yep, it is. And, sometimes I get on social media and I read some of these tweets and Facebook messages, and people seem so impatient. And I feel like maybe I should console them, maybe I should remind them. And I figure, who cares? They'll learn. Hopefully in 2023, we're fighting for the number 1 seed in the playoffs. They'll come to understand that this was the plan all along. So yeah,
hopefully we look back and say, hey, that was worth it. I hope so. What do you think about the have you watched any of these? I guess you won't have to, but have you watched any of the Amazon broadcasts so far this year? Because I've had audio issues with mine throughout the year where it's just sometimes it wasn't matching, sometimes it was reverberating, or it goes super high and then super low, and just like what is going? What have you had issues with that?
More so with the buffering, the streaming, which really annoys me because we've paid so much money here for great internet service. And so I don't know if it's an Amazon thing. I don't know what it is. Too many people on Amazon.
This is the future, though.
Yeah, it is the future, but it's just, why start the future when you're not ready for it yet?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it screws with a lot of people that like to do live betting on games because their Amazon feed is about 45 seconds to a minute off, and they're trying to live bet stuff, and it's just like, why is this closed, or why are the odds changed? It's because you're a full minute and a half behind the actual game. But we're gonna see this all next year because Sunday Ticket's going to a streaming service. That's a foregone conclusion. So it's just, is it going to Apple? Is it going to Amazon? Where is it going? And so there's going to be a lot of people who, myself included, who rely on that Sunday Ticket access, and I'm just going to have to stream it. So whenever we're doing a show and you're like, where the hell is John? It's like, well, he's not done watching the end of the game yet because the internet slowed down and he's still got 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, the game's been over for 4 minutes. It's almost like getting spoilers during the draft where you see where the team already drafts.
I hate that.
On Twitter. It's like, I guess they made the field goal. I'll watch it in 10 minutes whenever the stream finally catches up.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Aldo, it looks like they're about ready to kick the ball off here.
Well, let's go watch some football, and we'll be back here at halftime. It'll be John, Tyler, and Danny. I'll be behind the scenes. So we get the halftime report here. Hopefully we're talking about a 20-0 Bears lead, and then after the game, whether it's win or lose, we'll be here, right, John?
That's right. As soon as that clock hits 000, we'll be back to give some raw emotion after that. But that'll wrap it up for this edition, this special pregame edition of Buffone 55. For Aldo Gandia, I'm John Buffone. Enjoy the game, everybody. Kick off right now. All right.